Hey, what's going on? Bike that has gotten quite a bit of attention on the single speed fix page that I haven't really done anything on yet. I figured I would share with you guys. It's this simonetti that I found and tell you a little bit of the backstory on it. But this video is primarily going to be me maintaining the left side reverse thread crank that came off of I guess a Janelli tandem, and you know, just how I've gone about this project and everything. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching. So I actually ended up getting this bike through a trade, and how I came about that was I was out in Copperas Cove, Texas. It's out near Fort Hood area, Killeen area, and I was working at a tattoo shop there. And you know, it was a drive for me. I think I was driving like almost 60 miles to it, maybe 45 miles. And you know, sometimes I would pass like thrift stores and pawn shops, and it's just how I am in general with bicycles. It's kind of like looking at cars or music equipment or anything that you have that obsession with, or like a hobby for, you know what I'm saying? You have an eye for something, it's gonna catch it. And I just find myself staring at bikes on the side of the road sometimes. And I passed by this place and I assumed it was like a bike shop. Well, then I go there and I see lawnmowers and a bunch of other stuff. So I'm like, okay, it's like a pawn shop, resale shop. There's no phone number. There's no business listing on Google or anything. And so I finally pull into the place and I walk up and there's like a row of like 15 bikes, maybe 12, somewhere in there. And I'm like, my first thing is it's like they're so close together. I'm not focused on what's written on the frames. I'm looking at wheels, components, derailleurs, chain rings, cranks, grips, stuff like that. What bars are on? And I'm like just glimpsing back and forth from first to last as I'm walking up. Like by then I had skimmed through it 4 times, and then that's whenever I looked at the bars on the first bike and I don't see any brakes. I'm like, okay, there's a track bike. What is it? And then I'm looking at it and I'm like, what? And it's got a Sagino 75 square taper. It had Mavic ellipses on it. I cannot remember what saddle was on it, or I think it had a Thompson seat post in it at the time. The bike is thrashed. I mean, it's got little dings and nicks all over it. There's a fat little dent on the down tube, like right ahead of the bottom bracket casing. And yeah, so I looked at it and a guy came out and he said, "Hey man, how's it going?" I said, "Good man. Do you guys think you'd take a trade for this bike?" And he said, "What do you got?" And you know, just threw my wits out there. I said, "I've got a Masterpiece Arms 30T, and it's a 9mm and holds 30 rounds, and I've got a DMG conversion kit with it." Basically, I had $1,400 worth of firearm that I was exchanging for this bike. They had the tag on it. They were asking $1,100 for the bike. And I mean, it had been sitting out there for a while. And like I said, I mean, the frame's pretty fucking thrashed. But I went back in there a few days later with my full DMG conversion setup and standard factory setup, and they traded. They did it. And so I start researching Simo and the company and find out all the history on the owner and him going crazy or somebody going crazy, something like that, and all this other shit. And then I start riding the bike and I'm like, this thing is freaking fast. And so I've had carbon tri-spokes on it. I've had a few different cranks on it, got a few different things with it. And I mean, did a HTX moon ride on it. It's been through fucking hell and back, and it is a freaking slick whip, man. So yeah, once again, like I said, I appreciate you guys tuning in. I know some of these videos can probably be kind of annoying because it's like, oh, what the fuck is Johnny talking about? But I'm glad you're here. Some of you guys know what this is. Some of you guys know about this kind of stuff. And you know, I'll go a little bit more in depth on how I did this build and you know where it's came from and where it's gone and everything, and try and put as much in here as I can.
Hey, so I just gotta find out for a moment. Quick pause in the middle of this. Sorry to interrupt. I gotta know, what's the deal with not having full tension on your chain? I see a lot of you guys out there, and you guys ride fucking nuts. It's fucking epic as shit. I'm not degrading it or trying to talk shit. But realistically speaking, I mean, you're about to see how I set my tension and everything, because you want to have that back pedal whenever it comes to fixed gear. I mean, whenever it comes to road bikes, to derailleurs and stuff like that, there is a tension for that kind of stuff in order for it to operate properly. And so whenever I see a fixed gear bike and I see you guys having all this slack, it's like, you know, if you pop back the wrong way, that shit's gonna come the fuck off, and then, you know, you're gonna wrap up, you're gonna mess your cog up, your lock ring, your chain, your frame, your chain stay, your bottom bracket housing, etc., 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 etc. Anyway, back to the video. Love you all. Hope you're doing good. Take care.
So right here for a quick clip, we're gonna jump forward in advance ahead of me putting the crank back together and everything, and you're gonna see how I set chain tension. You know, I kind of took my time with it a little bit. It's nothing too extreme or crazy or anything like that. There's not really a lot to it. It's just chain tension. Like I said, I just have mine set right at that point of where we're gonna go a little bit of backlash and go a little bit of front forwards and whatnot. So you know, to each their own with that. Everybody's preference. You know, whatever your comfort zone is, do your thing. More power to you. So, yeah. Something else that I haven't thought to really add on too much is, like, there's been times where I've posted the bike on social media and immediately there'll be, you know, comments, oh, left side drive, how does your cog not come off? Well, if we all know how a fixed gear bike operates, you have a lock ring, and the lock ring tightens counterclockwise. So that's just left. And so if the tension is pulling on the cog to even loosen it fairly, if you have everything seated correctly all the way down as tight as you can get without stripping anything, then the lock ring is going to hold the cog in place. So far, I haven't torn any threads or anything like that. I do want to work on more footage of me sprinting it, skidding and everything, and try and get like a third eye view of me riding the bike and go from there. If, you know, if anybody's curious as to how I acquired this crank, at first, you know, it didn't come to mind that it was a crank off of a tandem. I actually originally installed it on the bike as a right-hand drive, because whenever I got the bike, it had Columbus rear dropouts, but the fork dropouts were campy. So I primarily did campy components, crank, you know, seat post, etc. I do want to get a campy wheel set for it eventually, and a track pod. Right now, I've had some questions on ratios and whatnot. I run a 52 on the front, and I have a 14, a 16, and an 18 that I simultaneously change through, just depending on what I'm
you know, it's like, oh, am I just cruising around the neighborhood? Oh, do I want to go keep up with some of the faster guys? Do I want to go do a social ride? It just kind of is hit or miss as to how I'm feeling as well. Another thing that I don't really share with a lot of people is I've had so many physical injuries since 2016 that it has severely inhibited me being able to skid stop, sprinting, like getting up over my bars is kind of a challenge now. Only a few people know that my knee comes out of socket if I put too much downforce pressure on my right leg. And so yeah, that's a pretty big contributing factor in fixed gear riding, but I'm still riding and I'm still doing what I can. So yeah, so jumping back to like how I actually got the crank was, I called a friend of mine that's a pretty big Campagnola collector, and I was like, hey, do you happen to have a pizza crank, a record or just a standard pizza? And so he said, I've got 2 pista cranks, and he said, I've only got 2 drive side crank arms and 1 non-drive side. And so he said they're practically NOS. And so he brings them over, and we're sitting there looking at them, and he's like, oh, they got this S and this D on there, and I'm not exactly sure what the markings mean. And so I'm trying to figure out what the deal is, and then, like I said before, I ended up installing the crank as a right-hand crank, like, you know, on each bike. And then I noticed, why is my right pedal threading into the non-drive side crank? You know, I was like, you know, like a dummy, I didn't think about it. And I actually ended up calling Stephen Burnsett of Fixed
cam?
Bike Shop in
Little
Houston. And he was the one that was like, it's off the tandem. It's off the track tandem. And so that's whenever I looked it up and realized that the factory ratio, or at least the common ratio, is a 42 for the clearance of the velodrome. It's the front crank off the track tandem, or a racing tandem. And I mean, it's a pizza crank. It says pizza. You know, you'd have one that says record or something else if it was a road crank. And so that's whenever we realized the markings, S is sinistre for left, and D is destra for right. And so, yeah, that's whenever it was like, okay, well, this needs to be in the position. Well, it's an Italian thread bottom bracket, so with those bottom brackets, you can flip them around either way. You don't have one side that's threaded opposite and one side that's threaded forward. No, both sides are threaded the same, so you can flip it around universally. Hey, so yeah, I just want to say thanks again for tuning in and checking the video out, and checking the build out and everything, and you know, just in general bike mechanics and whatnot. Love you all. Thanks for everybody that I get to ride with. Some of the social rides, the East Side social ride, I haven't got to do that ride yet, but I want to give a shout out to CJ and everything that he does. Liquor and Wood Bike Crew, ATX Bike Social, you guys are fucking awesome. Tulu with the Moon Ride, I love you, Tulu. I've known you for years. You're the greatest. There's a few of you other guys that I threw in, and most of this footage, even if there's stuff that I left out, even if there's rides that I've done with you guys and you're like, oh, why didn't he put that in there? Most of these rides that I have footage of are on this particular bike. Like some of the other rides that you might have seen me on, I might have been on an Affinity Low Pro. There's a Torelli that I ride on every now and then. There's, you know, many bikes that I've ridden in different rides and that I've owned over the years. So yeah, take care. Thanks for watching.